Hey guys, welcome to Y&R Daily Updates YouTube channel. Today's topics: Young and Restless has created a huge problem for itself and found a way to take it from bad to worse. Let's tell it like it is. Daytime television has always had a rape problem. Sometimes soaps decide that the perpetrators are too interesting to get rid of and keep them around despite the horribleness of their crimes. General Hospital's Luke, One Life to Live's Todd, Days of Our Lives' EJ. Other times, soaps write off the assaults as so much water under the bridge. Bold and Beautiful's Ridge not once but twice. Guiding Lights Roger. Days of Our Lives Kristen. But The Young and the Restless has an especially big problem with its handling of rape, and sadly, it's not shrinking, it's only getting larger. Over the years, we've watched, disgusted, as Victor set up Billy to be raped by Chelsea in Myanmar, and then had the victim declare bygones and romance his attacker. We've been outraged as Victor dropped a Jack lookalike in Phyllis's bed and allowed her to be violated. And once again, we're grossed out that Victor has weaponized mentally unstable Patty and sicked her on Jack. To be clear, that's bad enough. But the show is going out of its way to make it worse by having Jack's wife Diane blame him for being drugged and taken advantage of. In what world is the victim at fault? Victor kidnapped Jack. Victor paid Diane to tend to him. Victor put them on a yacht with bourbon that was obviously drugged. And somehow Diane's takeaway from this is, I can't trust Jack. We've all but given up begging Young and Restless to make it make sense. But could the show at least not be so tone-deaf and crass as to make us want to hurl by victim shaming? Inspirational television, this ain't. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. The problem didn't arrive all at once. It never does. Instead, it slipped in quietly, scene by scene, episode by episode, so subtle at first that even longtime viewers of The Young and the Restless couldn't quite point to the moment when something began to feel off. The familiar rhythms were still there. The polished sets, the dramatic pauses, the intense close-ups that had defined the show for decades. And yet, beneath all of that, something fundamental had started to shift. Something that wasn't easily fixed. Something that, once noticed, couldn't be ignored. It started with the characters, or more precisely, what had begun happening to them. For years, the strength of The Young and the Restless had lived in its characters, their history, their relationships, their layered motivations. These weren't just names on a script. They were people viewers had grown with, argued about, rooted for, and sometimes even mourned. But lately, those same characters felt different. Not evolved, not deepened, just altered. Motivations that once felt grounded now seemed to shift depending on what the plot required. Decisions came out of nowhere, untethered from the emotional groundwork that had once made them believable. Long-standing dynamics, friendships, rivalries, romances, were rewritten or ignored entirely, as if history itself had become optional. And that was the first crack. Because in a world built on continuity, memory is everything. Take a character who once stood as a moral center, steady, reliable, someone whose choices carried weight. Suddenly, that same character might act impulsively, even recklessly, without the internal struggle that would have once defined such a shift. Or another, known for cunning and strategy, might make a careless mistake, not because it revealed a deeper flaw, but simply because the story needed them to fail. These weren't bold reinventions. They were shortcuts. And viewers noticed. Not all at once. Not in a single episode. But over time, the unease began to grow, a quiet sense that the people they thought they knew were becoming strangers. Then came the storylines. If the characters were the foundation, the stories were the structure built on top. And lately, that structure had begun to feel unstable. Plots stretched on too long, losing momentum long before reaching their conclusion. Others appeared suddenly, with high stakes and dramatic twists, only to fizzle out without resolution. Important moments, confessions, betrayals, revelations, sometimes felt rushed, as though the show was eager to move on before fully exploring their impact. And perhaps most frustrating of all, consequences seemed to disappear. Actions that should have reshaped relationships or altered the course of lives instead faded into the background, barely acknowledged. Conflicts that once would have fueled months of tension were resolved in a handful of scenes. The result? A world where nothing truly stuck, where no matter how dramatic a moment seemed, there was always the lingering question, will this even matter next week?